Hey, Rick, do you have a second to look at a book?
Sure.
Today was actually kind of weird. I was just looking at a book with Rick, and another one came in. It was just perfect timing.
The Adventures of Tom Sawyer.
Classic of American literature. This is actually the Salesman sample for Tom Sawyer.
Okay, that is definitely cool.
I consider it the holy grail of Mark Twain collecting.
All right, there you go.
I really had great timing. Their book expert was actually in the shop and ready to look at it. The book is sort of like the preview for a movie. These are excerpts from Tom Sawyer. I'm prepared for tough negotiation. I've been here a few times. They always have their eye on the profit. 1876, Tom Sawyer came out. You know, Mark Twain, he was an amazing marketer. This was a period where books were normally sold in bookshops, and he decided with this publisher that he would send salesmen around trying to get, sales of his up-and-coming book. When you open it up, you have different binding types, like you would offer a cloth binding at a certain price, or different types of leather bindings.
Well, and that's why this book is interesting, even though it's not the first edition. It's because it kind of shows the history of printing, how things would have been sold at this time. You get more of an eye into the things that you normally don't get to see, how things were done behind the scenes.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the reasons that Twain liked to sell by subscription is that he said, that way people have already committed to buying the book before they know that it's bad. And he said that specifically about Tom Sawyer.
Yeah, well, he was very worried how Tom Sawyer was going to do. He wrote it as basically an adult book, but it kind of got branded as a boy's book, which sort of annoyed him.
Yeah, he wasn't known for writing books about children, and this was a big departure for him. It was a big risk. Tom Sawyer was pretty controversial at the time because he was not a good person. He lies, he cheats, he steals. So this was really hard because he wasn't a good example for kids.
Okay, so what do you want for it?
Well, I would like to get $10,000 out of it.
What do you think?
What do I think? Let's see. This is a really rare Mark Twain salesman's prospectus. Salesman's copies were thrown out after they had served their use. That being said, it's also quite beat up, and it's still not a first edition Tom Sawyer. With all of those things in mind, the value that I would place on it retail is probably between $9,000 and $10,000.
Okay. I'm thinking $5,000. I have to resell it. I have to make money.
I mean, I tried to find out, and the Library of Congress doesn't even have a copy of the Salesman sample. It's that rare.
He's right that this is a more rare salesman sample of Twain than other works by him.
Yeah, honestly, $5,000 is just too little for me to go. I mean, I want you to make a profit. I honestly didn't think $10,000 was unreasonable. I'll tell you what, at the end of Tom Sawyer, he finds gold. You know how much gold he finds?
$5,000 worth.
$6,000. Finds $6,000 worth of gold. That's really the least I could take. And I think it gives you...
I'll go 55. It's a fair price. You know it's a fair price.
I actually think $6,000 is cheap.
It was a little awkward to sit there during the negotiation. You want to put in your 2 cents, but it's not really your business.
I really want to stick to $6,000.
I'll go $5,500.
$6,000, you will have a line of Twain collectors at your door, I promise you.
Once you start getting over like $1,000, $2,000, the amount of people in this world that have the money to buy it and are willing to buy it dramatically falls off a cliff.
It's honestly hard to give this one up for that. It's a very special book. How about, like, Tom Sawyer, he swears on a blood oath. I'll do a blood oath at $5,500.
$5,500. It's a deal. I'll meet you right over there, and I'll have someone write you up.
$5,500 was honestly low. I think he's going to make a profit. On the flip side, I think Mark Twain would be smiling to know that I got $5,500 for a book that was likely going to be thrown out in the 1800s.
What do we have here?
This is a Pony Express Bible.
Okay. So it's a quick read?
Quick read. Nothing to it at all. I came here today to attempt to sell a Pony Express Bible. I believe it's one of 300 printed in 1859. I bought a box of books for $40. For the Bible alone, I hope to get $5,000.
Very cool. Where did you get this?
I got a friend of mine that cleans up after estate sales, and so he gave me a call when he had a box of old books, and this was in it.
Corey, check this out.
What is it?
It's a Pony Express Bible.
Why would I want to see that?
Because it's the Pony Express, and I can't be the only one around here who knows about American history. They charge by the ounce, and you could basically get mail from Missouri to California in 10 days, which was just astronomical speed back then. The Pony Express was basically a relay race. The riders would change horses every 15 miles, and every 100 miles, they would just change riders completely. Their fastest run ever was in less than 8 days. That's pretty incredible with all the different riders and horses. But that time, it was pretty important. They were carrying Lincoln's inaugural address. Have you done any research on this, or?
I have, and I've got some conflicting information. The Museum of Biblical Art had an exhibit where it featured one of these. In their article, it stated that it was one of the original Pony Express Bibles, but then I talked to a guy at a pretty prominent auction company that told me a different story, so I didn't know what to believe.
Normally, I would jump at the chance to buy anything associated with the Pony Express. But the name itself is so legendary and iconic, the majority of the items out there are all fake.
So, I mean, it seems kind of stupid for a guy who's in the Pony Express to be riding around with extra weight such as a Bible.
From what I understand, they had to take an oath on the Bible before they could be employed by them.
I doubt if they carried it with them. I do know that the guy who owned the Pony Express was a really, really religious guy. So the handing out of Bibles probably did happen.
Okay. You looking to sell it?
I am looking to sell it, and I would take $5 grand for it.
All right.
I have no idea. That's the problem. It's in really bad shape. I don't want to open it up or anything like this. The spine is practically gone. And
The missing pieces are inside. If it could be repaired, I don't know.
I don't know if it would be best to rebind this or not.
Yeah. Well, I believe this is a really desirable book. There's only 12 known to exist. This should be number 13.
Maybe we just got to find out if it's a Pony Express Bible.
Fair enough.
I have a book expert who can look at it.
That'd be great.
There's just a million questions here.
You want me to go call Rebecca?
Call Rebecca.
All right, I'll be right back.
I hope that whoever they call in is familiar with the book or can do some research quickly and find out exactly what I have.
What have we got?
This is a Pony Express Bible.
Okay.
From what I've found, there's only 12 known to exist. Maybe this is number 13?
The 12 known that you're thinking, that's a 1960 census. There have been a few discovered since then. That doesn't mean that they're not super rare. An actual Pony Express Bible is pretty rare. There are definitely more than a dozen in institutions, a few floating around private collections. Really hard to find. You have these three founders of the Pony Express. You have Russell, Majors, and Waddell. And Majors is the guy who's really, really devout Christian. And he's the one who insists that all of his Pony Express riders take an oath. They're told they can't swear, they can't drink, they have to deal honestly with their fellow men.
Yeah, you put me on a horse for 100 miles a day, and the first thing I do when I get off that thing is go to the bar.
Yes, exactly, right? These guys led a rough life. To ask them to not drink, not swear, I mean, that would be a lot of self-control to be a Pony Express rider and actually follow the oath. But as a result, there are a few of these Bibles that survive because Majors actually worked with the American Biblical Society, and he received 300 Bibles from them. And these were all actually kind of like presentation Bibles. You can see here we've got this description on the front of the cover. All of the Pony Express 300 had a presentation on the cover. And this one specifically mentions the Overland Mail Company. All of the Pony Express ones, they specifically have a presentation inscription gilt on the cover. It says, presented by Russell, Majors, and Waddell, which are the founders of Pony Express, 1858.
Okay. So what you're saying is this is not a Pony Express Bible?
It is definitely not official Pony Express Bible.
Well, that's not good.
A Pony Express Bible would go exponentially more than this. At least double, definitely into the 5 figures, big deal, all right? Overland Mail was a slower, slightly different complementary company, but I would still put the value about $6,000 to $7,000.
Oh, really? In that shape?
in that shape.
Okay, because I was thinking you were going to say like 300 bucks.
Well, it's still part of the American West, and there weren't that many of these. It's not a surprise that it's kind of destroyed.
All right. You're the best.
Yep.
I had no idea this thing would be worth that much, especially when it's not actually a Pony Express Bible. But it's a great piece of Americana, so I'm going to try and buy it. Well, it's not a Pony Express Bible. What do you realistically want for it?
I really want $5 grand for it.
I'm not going to do $5 grand.
What will you do?
2,500.
Yeah, I can't take 2,500.
It's going to sit for a while. I mean, you got to find the right customer. 99.9% of the people in the population don't have that kind of money to spend on a book.
Some of these collectors are passionate, though.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. But you have to find them.
All right, why don't you give me $4 grand for it then?
No,
No, huh?
no.
So what's your best, man?
My best is 3,000. I won't go a penny more.
You won't go 35.
Nope.
Yeah, you will.
Nope. I'll go $3,000.
All right, you got a deal. I'll take it.
All right. You want to write them up?
Yeah, come with me, man. You want to deal with that? It looks delicate.
You know, I stick 3,000 in one hand, the book in the other. I'll easily go home with the 3,000.
Hey, how can I help you?
I have a letter written by Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1922.
Cool, let me see it. Isn't it amazing how presidents usually write like doctors?
We got the letter from my wife's grandfather. He was a prominent attorney in New York State, and I suspect the letter was in his law firm. And I think the letter is valued at about $15,000. I'd like to sell this letter because my oldest son is getting ready to go to college, and it would be a great opportunity to offset some of the costs.
Do you mind if I read it?
Please,
Sucks getting old.
tell me about it.
Dear Al, would you have a talk with my old friend, Robert Prater? He has an insurance matter which has already been, well, taken care of by Mr. Butler. Scribble, scribble, Franklin D. Roosevelt. Yeah, so basically it's a letter he's writing to some guy named Al, hoping he takes care of some insurance matters.
Yes.
Okay? It's written on 22. He did get polio on 21. He's paralyzed from the waist down at this point. And it is on his personal letterhead.
Right.
Yeah, another great thing is his full signature.
Right.
Okay, you don't always get his full signature. You get initials with Roosevelt. FDR memorabilia is incredibly popular because he's linked to so many historical moments that shaped our country. It's definitely interesting, but I just need more information. So, how much you want to get out of it?
$15,000.
$15,000.
I've seen other letters on the same letterhead and stationery go for substantially more money, so I feel it's a fair price for it.
Okay, it is really cool, but I have my doubts. My big concern over this is right after he was struck down by polio, became paralyzed. I would really assume he had a secretary doing everything for him.
I suspect not, only because it's on his own letterhead, and the penmanship matches across the whole letter and then into the signature.
Do you mind if I have someone look at it? I have a friend, she deals in documents like this.
Okay, great.
I'm gonna go give her a jingle.
Great, thank you. I'm confident that the letter was written by FDR himself. We've seen similar letters online that show exactly the same penmanship.
July 1922, at this point, he has retired from being Assistant Secretary of the Navy.
Right.
He just had a failed run for Vice President.
Right.
He, with James Cox, ran against Warren G. Harding in 1920 and lost.
Right.
And then it was just the summer before that he contracted polio. And actually, they believe it was during the Boy Scout Jamboree that he participated in. So,
Well, it seems plausible. I mean, a lot of kids there, and there was no vaccine.
yeah. So what are your concerns?
I know that most of his life he had secretaries, and I just assume that, especially this time when he's not feeling well, they were all dictated letters.
Right. Well, at this time, I mean, he certainly did have secretaries, and he had many secretaries throughout his life who would sign his name.
All right, so whip out the apparatus. The apparati?
The optic.
Okay.
Here, what I have is essentially a dossier of different secretaries who signed FDR's name over the years. You can see how many different secretaries there were. See all these are proxy signatures from the 1930s. And what we really need to compare it to is the signatures of Roosevelt's own handwriting from about 1921 to 1923. The D in Franklin D. Roosevelt tends to be pretty different. You can see here it almost looks like an N or even a W. And I'll highlight this here so you can see that a little bit more. And then the other thing is specifically the angle you've seen that crossbar and the F. That's an angle that's often changed by secretaries. You can see these angles here are the same.
So you think it's legit?
Yes.
Okay, sweet. Now, what do you think it's worth?
Collectors love the presidents. If you follow the presidents, you're following American history step by step. If it were done while he was president, there are only a couple dozen surviving letters while he was president on his letterhead, completely in his handwriting. I would actually say that this is probably worth about $1,500.
That's a little disappointing. You know, I had hoped to get something closer to about 15,000.
15,000 would be completely viable, but it's really not too special. He's not talking about his failed vice presidential bid, for example, or he's not talking about running for governor himself, which he does a little bit later. He had much more time in 1922 to do a handwritten letter than he would have, say, when he was president in 1941. That's when you get into those amazing values like 15,000. But as it is, the content is pretty so-so.
Right. Okay.
Thanks, you're the best.
I was sorry to disappoint him, but with the content and the year, it just wasn't going to go that high. It's a sum insurance matter. It's Mr. A, go talk to Mr. B, and that's all we've got.
How much do you want now?
Well, she said it's only worth 1,500. So it's really worth more to me than even the $1,500. So I don't know if I would want to sell it now.
Okay.
You know, because you're not going to offer me 15,000.
No, I'm gonna offer you like 800 bucks.
Right. So for $800, I'd rather just keep it in our family.
All right, sorry for the bad news.
Thanks for your time.
No problem.
It's still a great letter. It was written by a great president, and it's something that we can pass down from generation to generation.
Hey, how's it going? What we got here?
I have a book signed by Shoeless Joe Jackson.
Oh, it's actually signed by him.
Right.
This is absolutely incredible. When you talked about old baseball players, you would have talked about Lou Gehrig, Joe Jackson, and Babe Ruth. Do you know how rare it is to find his signature?
No, not at all.
It's the rarest sports signature, period.
Wow. I came to the pawn shop today to sell my book signed by Shoeless Joe Jackson. I found the book in a foreclosed home in a stack of other books. What I know about Shoeless Joe Jackson is that he fixed a World Series and he played a baseball game without shoes.
Say it ain't so, Joe.
It seems to be a collaboration of some sports stories. The first one is about Shoeless Joe, but it seems to be about the darker side of sports.
Yeah, the story is that him and 7 other guys on the 1919 Chicago White Sox took money to fix the World Series. They were all acquitted in a court of law. Okay, they were not found guilty in a court of law, but the whole incident more or less destroyed his baseball career, his reputation for the rest of his life.
Right.
Shoeless Joe Jackson was a baseball legend. He was such a good hitter, Babe Ruth actually copied his style. If it wasn't for the scandal, there is no doubt that he would make it to the Hall of Fame. So you got the signature certified.
Right. When I found the book, I saw what appeared to be 2 signatures. The first one isn't very legible, and then the second one is clearly different than the first one, so.
Well, he was illiterate. He could not read, and his wife signed everything for him. All the signed copies of this book, most of them, everyone you see will have this in it. Shoeless Joe Jackson, signed by his wife. He was embarrassed how bad his handwriting was on the only thing he could write, so that's why you never saw it.
Okay. So this could really be an amazing signature.
You will not find a rare autograph. Normally, I wouldn't go near a book like this unless I had my own experts take a look at it. But Joe Jackson's signature is so rare and so expensive, I just have to take the gamble before this guy walks out the door with it. So we have a certificate of authenticity, we have the book. So how much did you want to get out of it?
Well, I did a quick search on his signature and found that there's not many of them. I'd like to get like 30,000 for the book.
Not gonna happen.
Okay. What is gonna happen?
I'm thinking closer to 10 grand. Of all the sports signatures in the world, this is the one most faked. Okay, and I have no idea who this person is who authenticated it.
Right.
So, I mean, I'll take a shot at 10 grand.
It's just not a signature. It's on a book about the dark side of sports. I mean, that has to bring something to the table.
I'll give you 11.
You're not moving much.
There's not a lot to move. I mean, it's a big risk nowadays with stuff like this.
How about 16,000?
I'll make it short and sweet. I'll go $13,000. I won't go a penny more. I mean, ask for $1 more, you can just pick the book up and leave. But I'll go 13,000. If you do that, I'll do it. So.
Well, okay, let's do it.
All right, deal, man.
Great.
Okay, I'll meet you right up front. We'll do some paperwork.
Okay.
13 grand is a lot of money, but a once-in-a-lifetime piece like this, I think it's definitely worth the gamble. Hey, guys, check out this book. I got a book signed by Shoeless Joe Jackson.
I thought he couldn't even write.
He barely knew how to write his name.
How much you pay for that?
13,000.
Is that a good deal?
I think so. I think I'll at least double my money.
Hey, Rick, you got a COA on it?
Yeah, I got a certificate of authenticity. I think it's legit.
Cool. What did Rebecca think about it?
I haven't brought it to her yet.
Oh, my
Who
God.
looked at it?
I did?
That's just a lot of money not to bring somebody in on that. You're no book expert.
I know enough.
Yeah, you know enough to get your ass in hot water. We have rules about buying expensive stuff without getting it checked out first. For some reason, Rick thinks his fat head is above the rules.
This is a business with risk and reward. And I'm like 90% sure it's real.
I'm worried about the damn 10%, Rick. Why don't you take the book and go up to Rebecca's and let's find out about this now.
Makes you happy, I'll go see her now.
Bye.
Some people's children, right?
That's stone cold, Corey.
Hey, Rebecca, how's it going?
Hey, how are you?
Pretty good. I bought a really cool book.
Okay, what is it?
Say It Ain't So, Joe, signed by Shoeless Joe Jackson.
You know how rare that is.
Yeah.
Rick popped in. I wasn't too surprised. He comes to me every now and then, but I was surprised by what he brought me.
It also comes with the certificate of authenticity, but I don't know this person at all.
Yeah, certificate of authenticity is only good as the person who writes them, right?
Yes.
There are less than a dozen signatures of Shoeless Joe that everyone can agree upon. So if this is another one, this is a really big deal. So you wanted to know about the book, right?
Yeah.
So it's an anthology, and it covers different essays about the darker side of sports. There are essays in here from people like Ernest Hemingway, P.G. Wodehouse, so some great names.
Okay.
But they're all reprints, too. So the Hemingway originally appeared in his Death in the Afternoon, and so it's a reprint from that. So as far as the book goes, you're not looking at a whole lot of value in the book, even as a first edition.
All right.
It's worth only about 50 bucks. But the signature, that changes things. This signature is real. This is by far one of the craziest things you brought to me.
All right, well, I paid $13,000 for it.
Oh, well, you either got a steal or you got screwed. You're looking at up to $100,000.
Oh, okay.
So what I have here is one of the only Joe Jackson signatures that all the authenticators can agree upon. So you can see how shaky it is. With someone who's not practiced at writing, they're not going to have the same muscles to be precise in their hand. So look at the J here. You see how it's got a curl, and you see how it's kind of moving a little bit. This one almost looks a little smoother on top, especially. Look at the A. This A here he was struggling with. This one looks like a pretty normal A that someone would just do. And then the K here goes straight into an O, whereas this, the K, he tries to do the loop, right? So there are some differences here.
Would his signature be inconsistent since he wasn't practiced?
Possibly, and that's one of the reasons why all authenticators don't agree on every Joe Jackson signature. But the key with this one is that it's just too neat in its attempt to look messy. I'm not convinced that it's real. But it is so rare and so controversial because there are some signatures that all authenticators don't agree on. If you can get the consensus of the community, then you would still be good to go.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
All right. Talk to you
Sorry,
later.
Rick. In my opinion, the signature is not real. I felt terrible telling Rick that he had made possibly a $13,000 mistake. That's not news you want to give to anyone.
All right, guys, we have history in the making right here.
What in the hell you got, son?
My Shoeless Joe Jackson book. Earlier, Rebecca, my book expert, said that the signature on this Joe Jackson book that I bought for $13,000 may not be real. So I sent it off to an authenticator who specializes in sports, and I just got the results back.
Let me see. Several factors became apparent during our thorough examination that prevented us from certifying the autographs, which means it's fake. It was drawn slowly, excessive pen pressure. The entire small case E in Joe's first name has been erased and signed over the original.
Great job, son.
Pretty much it's a bunch of stuff saying it's fake.
Just shut up. Hey, you're back.
Hey, how's it going? Nice to see you again.
So what do you got for me this time?
This is a very special book. It's called an Incunable. It was printed in 1484.
So Incunable is any book printed before 1500, correct?
Exactly. One of the oldest printed books.
Just what we need, Rick, another old book.
We sell old books. It's part of our job. It's part of our business.
Yeah, well, they don't sell that well.
Part of his job is just be a grumpy old bastard.
Whatever.
I came to the pawn shop today to sell an Incunable, one of the oldest printed books. This was the first generation. The book was bought at auction 20 years ago for $3,500, so I hope it's gone up since then and I can make a little bit of a profit.
I happen to have one of these things now.
Ah, that's great.
Since I'm buying so many books.
It's very interesting, the binding actually, it's bound in pigskin, which
Okay.
was one of the early ways you would bind books. You know, the paper is actually made by soaking, rags in the 15th century and fermenting them.
Yeah, most people don't realize that paper made out of wood wasn't until the 1800s.
All of these little holes were made by bookworms. They munched away.
I don't think that's a good thing, though.
Well, it happens in a lot of old books.
Yeah, you can tell by the illumination right here that it's early Renaissance. Illuminated books have illustrations that are hand-painted. As books became mass-produced, the art form of illuminating books faded away, which is a shame because the illustrations in this book are stunning.
I mean, when you think about what this book survived, the number of wars and what was going on in the 1400s, I mean, this was 9 years before Columbus set sail for America. The book is actually on an interesting subject matter, too. It's written defending a famous theologian and philosopher called St. Thomas Aquinas. His philosophy really reintroduced logic, debating things, and it became a very important, method for the Renaissance.
Okay, that is definitely cool. It's no secret that I love antique books, and this is one of the oldest books I have ever had in my shop.
I'm very concerned about these wormholes going throughout the whole book.
Well, they had good taste, those worms.
Quite frankly, I don't have a lot of books from the 1400s coming in here every day.
I understand.
Let me call up a friend. She's an expert in rare books. I like it. I want it. I just want to make sure I'm not overpaying for it. I'll be right back.
Thanks so much.
If it checks out, I'm definitely going to want this for myself. I'm sort of in love with it already.
Some of the most beautiful books ever printed are some of the earliest. And this is actually quite a beautiful book. With most books, age doesn't matter, right? When you have edition, first edition, that's what you want, the first book printed. The exception, Incunables. They are actually collected simply because of their age. An Incunable is a book that was printed within the first 50 years of the invention of printing. Incunable is Latin literally for in the cradle, so it means the infancy period of a book. Rick, you brought me in. What are you worried about?
I don't know if this is great condition or this is really bad condition because it is 1484. I've never actually had a book this old, so take a look at it. I want to see what you think.
Rick, you're right that you really have to consider the condition for different time periods. When you're talking about a 15th century book, there's actually a little bit more leeway. So for example, the wormholing that you're seeing, bookworms really did love rag paper. A lot of 15th century books have wormholing. It doesn't hurt the value very much. Now, we do have a problem.
Okay, what's the problem?
A very important aspect of this book is not original.
Really?
The illumination is nice, but there are a couple things that stand out to me. The first thing is this black coloring here. Black is a most unusual color for a 15th century illumination.
Okay, so when do you think the illumination was done?
This illumination is at best late 19th century. So this kind of changes things.
Okay.
It's pretty unusual to add an illumination so much later to a book from the 15th century. Today, we just consider that heresy. But what it comes down to is the book is not worth as much as it could have been.
So what do you think it's worth right now?
If this were a 15th century illumination, you'd be looking at a price range of, $6,000 to $7,000. Right now, it's worth $3,500 to $4,000.
Really?
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Yep, good seeing you.
Even though the illumination was put in the book later, it's one of the first books ever printed, and I would love to have it. So, with everything Rebecca said, how much you want?
I mean, it's a lot less than I wanted, knowing what it cost 20 years ago, but is $3,000 fair?
I'll tell you what, I will do $2,500. I won't do a penny more.
I mean, how many times do you get an Incunable in your shop here?
Not very often, but remember, there's a supply and demand thing. I mean,
Meet me at 3.
I'll do $2,500.
I hate to see it go at a loss, but I'll do 25.
$2,500.
You got it.
Meet you right over there.
$2,500 is not what I wanted for the book, but I'm in the business of buying and selling things, and he's in the business too, and he's got to make a profit, and overall, it's quite fair.
What do we got?
I have a signed copy of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I got it from Hunter S. Thompson.
You got it from Hunter S. Thompson? How'd you do that?
I actually spent a weekend with him in 1988.
Oh my God, and you survived.
I did survive. Hunter S. Thompson passed away quite a few years ago. I think the value of the book now is probably as high as it's going to be. In retrospect, I don't know that had I read the book ahead of time, I would have agreed to go and help him that weekend.
Tell me about the weekend with Hunter S. Thompson. That sounds like a lot of fun.
I had a call from a friend one night who worked at a resort in Phoenix saying, Hunter S. Thompson is here. He needs somebody who knows how to type to help him write an article. And in the course of about 48 hours, he got nothing written. He spent most of the weekend paranoid that somebody was out to get him.
Yeah, the guy was crazy, but people loved him. He wrote the book in 1972, and then 1998, it got really popular because Johnny Depp and Benicio del Toro made the movie. They rent a Cadillac. In the trunk of the car, they've got an obscene amount of drugs. And he wrote like his whole manifesto on life and, barely turned in an article he was supposed to write. So he signed it?
He not only signed his name, he wrote a little note to me.
Beverly, thanks for the help in that eating white trash oil slick in the desert called Phoenix. Your friend, Hunter S. Thompson. Yeah, he really was one of those guys that just didn't care what anybody else thought. Hunter S. Thompson is legendary, and Fear and Loathing is considered his masterpiece. It's just the stories about a bunch of guys just having a crazy time in Vegas. I can kind of relate to it. So, do you have any idea of what you'd want to get out of it?
I'm hoping maybe about $800.
I have no idea. I have no idea what it's worth. To be honest with you, the book really isn't worth much itself, but the whole actual handwritten note and it being signed by him, I mean, that's really, really cool. I mean, I have no doubt that someone would want to buy it. I do have a friend, though, that runs a bookstore, and if there was anybody in the world that could tell me what it's worth, it's going to be her. Do you mind if I give her a call?
Not at all. I'd actually like to hear what she has to say also.
I'm the furthest thing from a book nerd, but I love Fear and Loathing. And if everything checks out, I'm gonna have a real tough time not buying this thing.
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. and it looks to be an inscribed copy.
It is.
Hunter Thompson said that he got into writing because it was the only thing he was good at. He said there was no drug he'd ever experienced that compared to the high of sitting at a desk and writing. So he was completely dedicated to his craft. He created a style of journalism known as gonzo journalism. It's not about the story itself, but it's about the process of getting the story that he likes to talk about.
Yeah.
Hunter S. Thompson is pretty well known in the literary world. His prose is in some cases as good as or better than some of the great 20th century writers. Well, quite frankly, the book, it's a paperback. You could buy that online for $5. There's no collectible value in the paperback itself. It is really about the signature and the inscription. One of the great things about Thompson is that he's not the type of guy to sign best wishes. You've got that long, bizarre inscription. That's the type of thing he does. And one of the things that you see with him a lot is he signs with his initials instead of a full signature. So this is pretty typical for Thompson. His H, it always looks like this W with this big loop. So the inscription is definitely real, which you knew. I would say that the retail price for it would be between $400 and $500.
That is a lot more than I thought you were going to say. I appreciate you coming in, Rebecca. Thank you.
My pleasure. Nice to meet you.
Originally, I was hoping for maybe 800, but I really didn't have any good idea what the book was worth.
Strictly because I'm a big Hunter S. Thompson fan, I'll offer you $250.
$250? How about $375?
I gotta make more than $25 off the deal. I'll go $300.
It's kind of low. He did sign it personally. How about $350?
All right, you got a deal.
I'm not surprised that he was willing to negotiate up to $350 because I could tell that he really did like Hunter S. Thompson. I have $350 and I'm really happy I was able to sell the book.
What do we got here?
I have a first edition Mark Twain that I'd like you to look at.
Okay, A Yankee in King Arthur's Court. So have you ever read it?
No, I haven't read this one.
All right, have you ever seen any of the movies?
No, never seen any of the movies. I came down to the pawn shop today to sell my first edition Mark Twain, A Yankee in King Arthur's Court. My dad gave it to me about a year ago. The book's 125 years old. It seems cool. I mean, the story sounds interesting. I think my dad will be okay if I sell it today.
Have you ever read any Mark Twain?
Yeah, I read Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer, both those in English class.
Did you like them?
I did, yeah. But I've heard that those books weren't originally intended for children.
I don't think they were either. My 10-year-old son just had to read Tom Sawyer, and it was tough reading for him because the vernacular had changed so much over the years.
I can imagine.
Mark Twain is born in Nevada. Did you know that?
I did not. I would have thought he was a Southerner from the books that he wrote.
Yeah, Samuel Clemens was born in Missouri. But when he was in Virginia City, Nevada, that's when he started taking up the pen name Mark Twain. So here in Nevada, we can say Mark Twain was born in Nevada. I think it's really, really cool. The amazing thing is it's a first edition. You don't see a lot of first edition Mark Twains. The book is about a guy named Hank, I think, and he was an engineer at a munitions factory. He gets hit in the head and he wakes up in medieval England. It's a true classic, and if it's a real first edition, there is money to be made here. So where did you get this?
My dad bought it at an antique bookstore about 25 years ago.
Okay. Did he pay a lot for it?
He says he never paid more than $50 for a first edition.
And you're positive it's a first edition?
I think so. I've done a little bit of research, and there's only one copyright date on it, so it looks like it's a first edition to me, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Just so you know, books usually just have one copyright date.
Okay.
If a book is made in 1889, they might make a whole run of them, and then they sell out, and 2 months later, they got to come out with a second edition. So it's all be in the same year. So what did you want to do with it?
I'm looking to sell it.
Okay, and how much do you want for it?
I'd like $1,500.
Okay, if it's a first edition, it's pretty cool. Some first edition Mark Twains can go for a lot of money. This particular one, I don't know.
Okay.
I have a friend, and she is the ultimate book nerd. She'll figure out if it's first edition, she'll figure out the condition, and she should be able to give us a price.
Okay.
All right, let me give her a call. I'll be right back. Hang out, okay?
I don't really know the value, and mine was kind of a guess, so I hope she says it's worth more than what I'm asking for.
Could you maybe not make that sound when I approach?
She's pregnant.
I could tell. I could tell. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm glad Rick is here to state the obvious. It's
Okay.
important.
All right, we have Mark Twain.
We do. All right. One of the things that's interesting about Twain with this book, he's a satirical writer and a humorous writer. And he was actually reading about King Arthur. And he started thinking, can you imagine what it would be like? How do you blow your nose if you're in full armor? And he starts thinking about all those practicalities that get taken out of the romanticized versions to show how silly culture can be. Twain was a humorist at heart, but he actually has a big variety. Connecticut Yankee is rather science fiction, whereas Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer are more young adult. And then you actually have travel essays that he was really famous for before that. And what are your concerns?
Well, first off, it's in a little rough shape.
Uh-huh.
And is it a first edition and what's it worth?
Right, okay. It's actually pretty complex because there were a lot of copies that were being run off, and it was a really disorganized system, this particular publisher. And a good example, let me show you, there's an illustration in here that will show that pretty well. Okay, so you have this caption here, it just says the king, right? In an earlier state of this, they actually had this little scroll decoration in between the two words, and it obscured them a little bit. So what happened is, as they're kind of doing quality control, they come in and they burnish that away. So you know that the earliest state actually has this sort of problematic caption, and the later states are clean like this. That means that this particular page was printed later in the run than other copies. All right? And that does matter for a collector. You want the earliest state possible, right?
The most complicated collecting ever.
But that's the fun of it. Another thing, on page 72, this book is notorious for, while it was being printed, individual letters and things started kind of falling off, and the type gets dropped, and as a result, in later copies, what you see is sort of spaces right around in this area. And this is actually clean, which means this particular page was printed early in the run.
So that's good?
That is good. So this book has been mixed together with early printed pages and later printed pages.
Okay.
We call that a mixed state.
But how did the early ones and the late ones get in this one?
Accident. It's because they're not just using one press, so it's not all in order. They've got a bunch of different presses going at the same time, and then they just grab sheets from all of them, put them together haphazardly, and if you're lucky as a collector, you have sheets that are all the earliest sheets. That being said, it is still a first edition. So given what state it is and the condition that it's in, I would price it retail $1,200 to $1,300.
Did I tell you she knew everything there is in the world about books?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're the best.
Glad to be of help. If this were just the ideal copy in every way, the earliest state, beautiful condition, you're looking at a few $1,000s more than what I appraised this book at.
I'm tired.
So, what do you want for it?
Well, I started at 15. She says it's worth 13. I trust you. If you're interested in it, just give me a fair price.
I'd give you $700 for it.
Can't do a little bit more?
Oh, really? I just heard, if you trust me, just give me a good price and I'll take it. Yeah, no, I can't. $700.
Not even 800? So
No, no, that is a fair price to me. You wanted a fair price. That's what I'm willing to pay.
Well, if 700 is really your best price, then we can do it.
Okay, $700. All right, meet you right up front and I'll write you up.
I feel okay about the deal today. I really wanted 800, but I'd like to see the book go to a happy home, a good collector.